Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to an F7 Building Blocks to Freedom video. And this one is on freedom, and it's a freedom update. So some of you will have seen the video that I did from the Freedom Rally in Sydney on the Saturday, the 20th of November, where I interviewed the lovely Susanna, or Susie. And just asked her, I did an imaginary moment with her and asked her about what she had been doing to bring hope during lockdown or during 2021. And she had actually created her own newspaper called Mates. So I encourage you to have a look at that, because there's so many people that have been doing wonderful things in the background. Sometimes we get it's almost like we're being suffocated by all the different pressures around, but we can choose what we do with that. Rather than react, we can choose to respond. And I'm not saying it's easy, and I know it's been such a horrible year for so many, and there's been so many people unwell for all different reasons. And obviously mental health would be one of them, which is one of the reasons that we do Imagineering for a Better World, because it's about bringing hope, especially in times of crisis, which we're in now. So what's been happening in Australia? Well, one of the biggest things that happened, apart from the rally, last week we had in New South Wales Supreme Court, we had a police officer who stood against the Minister of Health, Brad Hazzard, in New South Wales, and she won the court case against the mandatory vaccination, which was huge. We also had, obviously, just to even have the marches around Australia, numbers were anywhere between 500,000 to 1 million Australians actually joining. Obviously, and not much of that made it to mainstream media. It was just amazing. The numbers for Sydney, for example, were anywhere between 100 to 300,000. I know it took us probably about 45 minutes before we were able to start our walk from Hyde Park after it began, just because there were so many people in front of us. And then even when we got all the way, through the journey through the city, and then we came back up to Parliament House, I think it was still going, maybe half an hour later, people were still leaving, or longer, people were still leaving Hyde Park to still travel through all the different streets through Sydney before they came up. So there's some really good, especially on Telegram with Joel Jamal, or I know True Arrow had one, Mac. There was just all different people that had, obviously, Rebel News. So when you get, especially the aerial shots, and you can just get a bit of an idea. Aussie Cossack, his was really good, of the footage of how many people, just so you can get a scale of how many people were there. So it was just awesome. So I've watched quite a few of those. So it's about freedom today. So we also had on last Thursday, Friday, Pauline Hanson put together a members bill, a private members bill, and it was basically against the mandatory vaccination. And she put it up in the Senate, which is the upper house in Australia. And so especially the end of last week and on Saturday, it was just so exciting. It looked like that she had created the same situation as when Gough Whitlam was removed as Prime Minister way back in 1975. And so the Prime Minister then had a choice to either, so basically what Pauline Hanson did, and there was basically saying that there was a group of senators that said that they would not vote the party way, or they would stop from voting until the federal government stopped the mandate of the jabs. And one of the main reasons to do that is because usually a base value of Australia is freedom, so free choice. And that's why so many people immigrate to a country like Australia, because we seem to be a free country where everyone's given a fair go, and definitely not given, not being forced with a medical experiment, as an example. And so with Pauline, she put together a private members bill. And so then the Prime Minister either had a choice to either table that in Parliament, or if he chose not to table it in Parliament, there was a possibility that he had to call a snap election, or that if he chose not to do that, that it could have been seen as a loss of confidence in the government, and then the Governor-General would have been forced to act. That's my understanding of it. Now, what ended up happening is that the private members bill was put up in Parliament yesterday, which is Monday, the 22nd of November. And there was 5 senators that actually crossed the floor, which was awesome. And I don't know why, but Senator Pauline Hanson and Senator Malcolm Roberts, both of the One Nation Party up in Queensland, they were remote, so they were actually forbidden from voting on the floor. But there was 5 other people. I know there was Senator Matt Canavan and a few others there, which was just awesome. So they were from the coalition, I believe. Now, but there was 44 ministers that chose not to ban the mandates, which is astounding, especially given the fact that there was between 500,000 and 1 million Australians marching on Saturday about that. And there's, conservative estimates, people say, okay, if there's one person that turns up at a march, then you can, say basically that there's 10 people that agree with that stance. I don't know if that's right or not, but I know that there's so many people that agree that didn't march. So to me, that sounds quite logical. I mean, that's a huge percentage of the population. And I know that we are living in these times of what's called echo chambers. So whether it be on Facebook or Instagram or YouTube or Google, it gives us more of what we're already looking for. So it's one way to think about it is when Donald Trump did become president, most of the world was just so shocked because they were living in an echo chamber. So they thought everybody else thought like them, whereas I wasn't shocked at all. And part of the reason is that I've deliberately through my life, for as long as I can remember, I want to be getting opinions from around the world. I want to be listening to what people on the left are saying, what people on the right are saying, what poor people are saying in one country or another country, or, what is Al Jazeera saying, or what is, from different places around the world. And so by that, those of you who have been around Imagineering to a Better World for a while, you will understand that everything that we do is about learning from the past, looking at best practice from around the world in the present, and then identifying future trends or desired outcomes, desired futures that we want, and then working together with like-minded people, or not even like-minded people from all different backgrounds, but collaborating to come up with the best model. So yeah, so in Australia at the moment, it's quite fascinating. So there is another freedom rally this Saturday, so we'll see how that goes. Obviously, there's all different restrictions, like we are living in segregated societies, especially in New South Wales and Victoria at present, and a few of the other states are coming online with that, where people who have either opted out of the immunisation register, which I have, people who are, so that could be people who are vaccinated, people who are part vaccinated, or people who are unvaccinated, but they just believe in freedom and they don't believe it's anybody else's business whether we're vaccinated or not. So it could be those people who have had adverse reactions, those people who have had a family member vaccine injured, or I shouldn't say vaccine because I don't actually agree that it's a vaccine, because we know that CDC and FDA and everyone changed the meaning of a vaccine to actually incorporate what's happening at the moment. So we're living in totally different times. And just on that, by the way, this week, I think it hit number 1, but it was definitely number 2 last time I looked. On the day 2 was the book by Robert F. Kennedy Jr. called The Real Anthony Fauci. And that book is just like, I don't agree with everything in it. And sometimes when people are coming from different points of view, but to me, it's like I said, it's important that we, read around, look at what different people are saying, what different people are believing. And for me, I rely a lot on first-hand testimonies of friends who are doctors, who are teachers, who are paramedics, who are people that I personally know that have been put in the position, who have seen all these different things happen, that know that just not normal things. Like say if you normally get the flu, you might go and get vitamin D, vitamin C. just simple things. But obviously, with what's been happening here, everyone's just been told, go home, don't do anything for 2 weeks. And then if you need it, then you can go to hospital. And we know the policies of the hospitals is you must be put on a ventilator, which there's many of in the medical profession are saying that's actually not the right treatment at all. If you just go through, and that's probably the biggest thing with this whole freedom is that with all of the plans in Australia, and apparently there's another 196 countries that have signed up under WHO, the World Health Organization, that there's nothing about treatment at all. And that to me is what is absolutely diabolical. It's like everybody, all the other roads are shut, all of the other ways of looking at things are shut off. You can only go down the way of surveillance and vaccines. So that to me is a major, major, major red flag, because it's just like common sense. If you've got a stomach ache, the old fashioned chicken broth, with chicken bone soup, or chicken noodle soup. So it's just some basic things that we've always known, like obviously if you're feeling a bit under the weather, if you've got a bit of the flu, getting some sunshine, getting a bit of TLC from your family, for example, are the best things. And we've been told not to do all of these, just natural, normal things that we would normally do. So there's a real struggle against freedom at the moment. So it's fascinating times. I really encourage you to have a look at the book, The Real Anthony Fauci. That's really well researched, and they're sort of they're trying to offer different sides. Okay, this is what the official stance was, but this is what all of these amazing medical, very reputable medical people have found, for example. So it's a really good read. It's quite simple to read, even though it's really well researched. There's so many other books, so many other things. There's many, many people who are offering the alternative point of view compared to the mainstream media. And I would just say, especially I've had people even say to me in the last few weeks, be careful what you're listening to. And I'm like, well, I know for a start, I've never been one just to look at, for example, the mainstream media, because I'm so aware that your mainstream media companies are the same companies that own your big pharma companies. They're also the same financial institutions that we put our money in as investors, or as like with our superannuation. And so to me, that in itself is, when it comes down to it, when you follow the money trail, basically most of the big companies in the world, including, Facebook and, like I said, the social media, the media companies, the Channel 9s, the Channel 7s, the CNN, all of those, ABC, they're all owned by the same companies, which go back, like to the big banking corporations. And then behind that, again, everything basically comes down to Vanguard, State Street, and what's the third one? I was just popped in my head for a minute. BlackRock. So Vanguard, BlackRock, and State Street, and then you go a bit further down, and then it all goes down to even one of those. So, and I don't believe in monopolies at all. And especially one thing I really find interesting, which is, again, part of this whole freedom. If I have a financial interest, but I'm saying you're not allowed to do anything else, you have to go here, but then I'm making money out of it, that to me is corruption. That's pure and simple. That's absolute corruption. That's a monopoly. And yeah, and that's what's happening. So when we're hearing from these medical people, for example, Anthony Fauci, Bill Gates, and Bill Gates, I'm using the term loosely because he's positioned himself in the vaccine market. But when you look at the patents, when you look at the money trail of where everything goes, they stand to gain billions of dollars. And even when you look at, okay, who are the big people behind these big companies and who is getting richer at the moment? So we know that the lockdowns, as an example, that's about, there's so many, especially small businesses that have closed. So many, millions of people around the world have lost their jobs. But who's getting richer? It's the big companies. It's your Netflix, it's your YouTube, your Google. Those are the companies behind them. It's Amazon. you know, Microsoft, Apple, all of these companies, and they're just getting richer and richer and richer. So it is a great wealth transfer at the moment that's going across to an extremely small group of billionaires. However, I believe that there is a different future that's also vying or jockeying for position. And so I believe a lot of us have come to a rude awakening, realizing, oh my gosh, could this possibly be true? Could this have all been happening for decades? If not, I know in my research, well before COVID came along, that I was just like, wow, a lot of this occurred like over 100 years ago. And so we're just now sort of seeing, oh my gosh, how we've been sort of herded like cattle down a certain way. Whereas I'm all for freedom. I'm all for, okay, what exciting is happening around the world? And I would refer you to the blog of the Imagineering for a Better World website. So im2.tv. So I for Igloo, M for Mary, the number 2.tv, and go to our blog. And we've got a Futurist Solution 2 blog series there where we look at different industries, different sectors, and look at, like I said, where a futurist is someone who studies, who learns from the past, studies best practice from around the world in the present, and then identifies future trends and desired outcomes, and then works together with others to bring that about. So there's lots of exciting things. It's, you know, it seems like it's really scary. It seems like, oh my gosh, this is never going to end. But I tell you what, it's the most exciting times. Like for me, the entrepreneurial mindset is what's going to change the world in one sense. I mean, that's already been changing the world to a bad way, because it's people who have the vision and then people who have the stewardship abilities. But with Imagineering to a Better World, everything we do is based on 4 base principles. So I call it see, heart, money, and be real. So see, having a positive vision for the future. Heart, having the character, the integrity, and the emotional intelligence. Money, representative of stewardship or responsible management, not only of your finances and your resources, but also your time, your health, and your relationships. And then being real, being authentic. And especially for me and other people of faith, it's about being firmly rooted in the love of the Father, knowing whose we are. Once we can receive that love, then we can better love other people, where we all win. Okay, so that's been quite a lot today. So that's sort of giving you a bit of background in Australia, where we're at. So far, yes, it looks like in one sense, the jab is not mandatory, like in New South Wales. So with the Supreme Court win with the police officer last Thursday or Friday. But then, on the other hand, we've got the federal parliament with those 44 senators who basically voted against banning the mandatory vaccinations. So again, I would always just put it back, follow the money, follow the money. What's happening? How is pressure being exerted, especially on politicians or and I would say that Australia is such an amazing country. And if you haven't seen on our Imagineering Moments playlist on the Catherine Ellis YouTube channel, we have Aussie Values series where we talk about mateship or Aussie ingenuity or the quiet Australian. So I'd encourage you to go and check those out. So they're all available free. A lot of things, the blog, the YouTube channels, the podcast, things like that. And we've got some really exciting things coming up. So thank you so much for watching. My name's Catherine Day. Today's has been a video on F for Freedom, which is part of our F7 Building Blocks to Freedom project. And it's an initiative under the social enterprise Imagineering to a Better World. So remember, we can change the world one day at a time, one person at a time, one decision at a time. Have a fabulous day.